Hello, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Steven Hour, and yes, we are back with, well, the first time in a very long time, a television series review. I haven't done it, the last time I've done a television series review, oh, geez, let me think, it was quite a long time ago, and I haven't done one in ages, and I thought, you know what, let's jump into it, let's do a TV show review. So today, I'll be reviewing, like I said last time, we'll be reviewing That 70's Show. The 70's Show is probably one of the greatest sitcoms ever made. It is truly fantastic. It is really funny, really great. Now, the whole premise of the 70's Show, well, both, like the title suggests, is pretty much a sitcom with Eric's family living in a 70's town, Wisconsin. And it's pretty much him and his friends getting into all sorts of trouble, and there's a whole bunch of references both to what was popular at the time, and for me it's a really funny show, and it's also was one of the best breakout characters pretty much in TV history, and launched the career for most of these people on the show. But we get that later in the cast bit. Now, the show was pretty much was created by. Now, it was created by Bonnie Turner, Terry Turner, and Mark Brazil. Hopefully, those names are being pronounced right. This show, well, timeline-wise, begins, at least in the series-wise, begins in, I believe it was, 1976, all the way up to pretty much New Year's of the 80s. And the show ran for 8 seasons, and was, released, first aired, I should say, released in 1998 and continued to 2006. For me, this show is truly great in funny sitcom. It has great running gags, and it has a really great, well put together cast. The show also gave us some of the greatest running gags. First off, the circle scene, which essentially to signify the teens and basically any character smoking pot. It is the 70s. Another thing I also like is the count. Like I said, this show takes place in the late 70s, and there's a lot of 70s and pop cultural references of the times. Another thing I also like is Red constantly saying dumbass or threatening to put his foot in your ass, which is both funny but also very intimidating. Other things also great about the running gags is Kelso's stupidness, the origins of where Fez comes from, because in the show they never explicitly state Fez's state of origin. Jackie's spoiltness is also played for laughs, and Eric's witty humor, and of course, the burns. Every time there's a savage burn, Kelso or even other characters will shout out "burn," which is absolutely hilarious, and I admit, really great moments for the show. For me, these are some of the many running gags that have always been great for this show, and is why this 70's Show is one of its most famous sitcoms probably ever made, and especially since this sitcom mostly is targeted at a teen audience. The cast for this show, well, first off, the main is Eric Foreman, portrayed by Topher Grace, and it's essentially, this is like our main character. Now, he portrayed Eric for the first 7 seasons of the show before eventually leaving on season 8 to pursue a movie career, and he wouldn't come back until literally the final episode of season 8, and sadly season 8 was its last season. Here we also have Ashton Kutcher in arguably his first acting role as Michael Kelso, who is essentially he's essentially smart, he's essentially good looking and kind of popular, but he's also portrayed as being very dumb, basically a child in a grown man's body, essentially, and we love him for that. Here we also have Mila Kunis as Jackie Burkhart, and it's essentially is the rich, good-looking, and spoiled rich child, sometimes selfish and very annoying and immature. But as the series goes on, she is essentially grows a bit. She still can retain a bit of her characteristics, but she's truly a great character to slowly evolve. And her character originally dated Kelso until they go off again, and eventually move on to Hyde. Hyde's character, Hyde, in from season 5 to essentially season 7 during that whole period, and then eventually would date Fez's character. Yeah. Speaking of Hyde, Stephen Hyde was portrayed by Danny Masterson, and essentially he is Eric's best friend. Now, Eric, and he's sort of kind of the complete opposite of Eric. He's more good-looking. He's pretty much strong and definitely anti-establishment. While Eric's a geek, he is not. And he is essentially kind of almost completely almost adopted by the Foremans, and he's essentially become in a sort of less of Eric's best friend and kind of a brother figure, kind of, really. Or at least have a more of a brother type relation, which I really like, even though they're really friends. The Foremans, who are Eric's parents, pretty much adopt him and consider him almost a brother, almost family. Now, he is known to be witty, blunt, and has a sarcastic sense of humor that goes heavily well with his rebellious personality. And he's a really great character. And he really does fit very well into, like, this world. Now, interesting fact, in the earlier seasons, he had a thing for Donna, but then that kind of died out. And I feel that was kind of for the best. Even though I could see why, as a sort of play who should get who, I never felt that really would have worked. Speaking of Donna, Donna Pinciotti, portrayed by Laura Prepon, hopefully that name's being pronounced right, is essentially Eric's long-term girlfriend and at some point fiancée, and is essentially really the main lead girl on the show. And she is pretty much literally the girl next door. She is tall, intelligent, good-looking, athletic, and she is kind of a bit of a feminist, a rebel, a bit of a rebel, and she's essentially Jackie's best friend, and kind of Jackie's, like, girlfriend, not girlfriend, but, like the girl, like Jackie's best friend girlfriend, that kind of thing. And really, for the series, she and Eric are essentially pretty much date for the majority of the show until eventually they broke up during season 4. And yeah, and she's really and I really like her character here. She's really great. Rounding out really the main 6 is Fez, portrayed by Wilmer Vladimir. Hopefully that name is pronounced right. Fez is actually not his real name. It stands for Foreign Exchange Student, but with a Z. He's essentially your classic fish out of water. He is essentially a foreigner living in America during this time period. So there's a lot of jokes about that. He's essentially and he's essentially arguably the horniest character on the show, and which is usually out of control. He's constantly, trying to flirt with the girls, but it doesn't work out. What doesn't take until the final season where he truly becomes a ladies' man. And like I said, he does date Jackie by season 8. And he is arguably one of the most picked on characters of the show because he is a foreigner living in this time period. And it's great. It's really great. Rounding out the rest of the cast is Eric's parents. Is Red Foreman, portrayed by Kurtwood Smith, and he is he is an old war veteran. He served in World War II and the Korean War, and is frequently hard on Eric and insults him, often calling him dumbass and threatening to shove his boot in people's asses. But he does display a bit of a soft side. His hobbies he's essentially that hard-working guy. He drinks a lot of beer, watches TV, reads the news. He's an old-school guy. And I really love him. He is like a really strong father figure, but not in a kind way, in a very more, not just stubborn, but also a bit hard, like a hard-on. Like almost can become across a bit mean. And for me, Kurtwood has really great comedic delivery, and that works contrast with Kitty Foreman, portrayed by Tabria Jo Roop. Hopefully that name's being pronounced right. And of course, judging by the last name, she is Red's wife, and the mother of Eric and Laurie, and is essentially Hyde's kind of adopted mother, the same way Red has become to Hyde too. And she's kind of the complete opposite, and she's more caring, nurturing more than I think Red is. And she's essentially a nurse by profession, but she drinks heavily and is a former smoker. She can be both loving at times, but when she goes off the handle, she can be absolutely funny as hell, and she's fantastic too. Really great casting choice all round. And here we have Laurie Foreman, portrayed for pretty much the majority, at least, portrays the character in seasons 1, 2, 3, and 5, portrayed by Lisa Robin Kelly, before being replaced by Christian Moore in season 6, and those are the only appearances the character ever did. She was gone in season 4, 7, and 8. She never pretty much returned, and she's basically Eric's older sister. She is attractive, promiscuous, manipulative, dishonest, and is essentially full on, I kind of gotta admit, and I don't want to be sexist or anything, but she is kind of slut and mean girl. That's what she essentially is, and she causes drama pretty much in some of the in the series. And honestly, for me, I think Lisa Robin Kelly is the definitive version. Nothing against Christina Moore. Hopefully that is not how her last name's pronounced, but she did a really admirable job with coming in. Lisa Robin is truly, for me, the better version of the character. Now, the reason why she was missing in season 4 is because behind the scenes, again, this is what I've found out. I'm not sure if it's 100% true, but behind the scenes, Lisa Robbins was sadly having a bit of drug and alcohol addiction problems that sadly led to a miscarriage. She essentially disappeared for season 4 and came back pretty much in the last few episodes of season 5, making her reappearance. But still, problems and drugs and alcohol sadly still continue to plague her. And when it came to season 6, she was recast and replaced with Christine Moore, who pretty much only appeared in a few episodes of season 6. Eventually, the character pretty much disappeared completely from the show. and truly the character is only heard in is only said in nitpicks, but we don't really get to hear much see her reappear after season 6. Name drop. And yeah, she is also another fun and interesting character. She's a character you both love and hate, and that is a really interesting way to do, because for characters like her, for characters I hate and loathe, and hoping to get their comeuppance. And I can't say that she doesn't get her comeuppance, but other than that, really, she's just really, her character balances those two worlds perfectly. The rest of the adults, we have Bob Pinciotti, portrayed by Don Stark, and is Donna's father. He too served in, he too is a war veteran, though he only served in the National Guard. Which irritates Red. He's essentially Red's best friend in a way. And he's essentially, well, really looks more of that 70s dad with that hair, with that choice of clothing, and is in many ways the complete contrast to Red. He's more fun, loving, and sometimes silly, but he can get mad and angry. We also here have Midge, portrayed by Tanya Roberts, I believe. And if that name should sound familiar, well, this actress portrayed Stacy in A View to a Kill, the Bond movie. You know, the James Bond, on the Bond series, and is essentially a Bond girl. She's also been in Charlie's Angels. She appeared quite a lot in the show's early seasons, but I believe she left in season 4 because to take care of her real life husband, and she will make casual appearances in the later seasons, and eventually, honestly, nearly gone entirely. Here we have Leo, who appears pretty much in most of the series, but was completely absent in seasons 5 and 6. He's essentially a hippie, and he becomes a friend to essentially all the kids, and in many ways a kind of father figure to Hyde. And he's hippie, he's always stoned, he's absolutely great. But we also find out that Leo was a World War II veteran and was awarded the Purple Heart. And he's just really fun to be around. In season 5, he left. Left the city, but came back some point in season 7. The real reason, and of course he was portrayed by Tommy Chong, hopefully that name is being pronounced right, and essentially the character is essentially like a hippie from that time period. Now the reason why he was absent for 2 seasons was because the actor was, I believe, sent to prison, and when he was released he came back. So yeah, this is the main cast. Oh, I almost forgot. Randy Pearson only appeared in season 8, and he is often considered to be one of the worst TV characters in history, portrayed by Josh Myers. He essentially is a character that has combined traits of Eric and Kelso. And he's practically a laid-back gentleman, polite ladies' man, but although many of his flaws would later surface, such as encompassing parts of Kelso's and Eric's personalities, and he's essentially, now, characters like that can be good, combining 2 personality traits of different characters. Look at Doctor Who, when the Doctor can sometimes share personality traits with previous incarnations. But they make them work because the actor also brings something new to the table. And sadly, I will admit, Randy doesn't. And He is arguably one of the not just worst characters in TV history, but he's sadly one of the worst in the show. And it shouldn't have been. But there's a reason why, but I will get to that later when we get to the more review by seasons. Season 1 is, for me, I think a really good start to the show. It sets up the character dynamic, how all these 6 teenagers, they have such great chemistry and work on each other. We get so many great running gags. And really the story is kind of Eric and Donna starting their relationship, with also Haya having feelings for her too. The Kelso and Jackie thing is pretty, fun as well. But also we get also the character dynamic with the other casts. Eric's parents, Donna's parents, Leo, forgive me, and Laurie. And I really like how it works. See, a first season of a show always needs to set up characters, their dynamics, and certain storylines to pursue. Season 1 is really just bringing them all together to work coherently and just mold together. Really, the biggest thing I can say, because Season 1 kind of did, is really understand Hyde's background. And I really love that really so much. For me, it is absolutely fantastic. For me, Season 1 starts the show off very, very, very well. And I think that honestly, stuff like that really would work in the long run. I can't really say anything bad happens in Season 1 that I dislike. But, yeah. And I also gotta admit, when watching this show with the first season, even though it's not a bad season, it for me starts to show off pretty strong. If I could be quite frank, there is I can't think on the back of my head a definitive and great episode that came out really from this season that stands heavenly out. I got to be quite frank. However, despite that, I can't say that I found this to be quite a bad season. And, yeah. I gotta be honest with that. In Season 2's case, I think it really picks up well. It's really, now for me, I've gotta be honest, season by season, it builds on each other. It really does. And honestly, that was the direction to go. Again, by this point in the show, Donna and Eric are essentially dating. And they do get into either some troubles. And I've got to be honest, this season had a lot of funny moments that I really, really remember. First off, with Donna and Eric's relationship department, we get more of where Donna asks Eric, Hyde, and Fez to take her out to a Chicago nightclub. To have fun, but only Donna's let in. We also get funny moments with Jackie and Kelso's relationship. Now that was teased on Season 1 with that, but this really comes more into it and has a lot and plays to what essentially will be a lot of things for the characters going on. And like I said, a lot of funnier things happen, but we also get some quite serious moments, such as Red on his last day of work. He is drunk, depressed, because he's worried how he's going to support his family. And he basically drags Eric, Hyde, and Fez to come drinking at the pub with them. And the funny moment of Kitty picking them up, driving them home, and they're all drink singing is absolutely funny, and I crack up about it. It's one of the funniest moments. But not as funny as when Hyde makes special brownies, which of course we know what those meant. When someone says special brownies in the 70s, we know what that meant, and I love that bit, because what's funny is that parents, Donna and Eric's parents, eat the brownies. It's funny as hell. It's one of the funniest moments. Also this season, we really get to see more of Laurie's more manipulative ways in the cast. And her sexual activities. And which is all good. All good. It's all fun. We also get to see also a bit of the, just like season 1 setting up the relationship with the cast, it still continues in season 2 with really how unfair Eric is treated compared to Laurie. Laurie is, now, Kitty and Eric know who Laurie is. She's not a good person, really. She's a more manipulative, but Red not just fails to see it, but always views her as daddy's girl, which she is not. Although in this season, he finally wakes up when this scene, when she moves out, but she fails to mention that she's living with another man, and this is great on Eric finally winning. And I really love it. And this is another great episode I really like here is when Red's trying to get a new job, but Eric gets hired first before he does. And there's another great episode where Bob, Red, basically all the guys of the group go essentially on a camping trip, kind of. And here the relationship, and here the ice starts to melt between, with Eric. And I think it's great. It shows that Red can be a hard-on. He can sometimes be unfairly treating Eric because Eric is too much of a nerd. And arguably, Eric is one of those classic adorable characters. He can be sarcastic, witty, and has this humor, but he is a nerd deep down, and can have flaws, I will admit. He can be a little bit selfish. But then again, to be fair, not every character needs to be so goody two-shoe and always do the right thing. There's nothing wrong with sometimes wanting to be selfish, and sometimes we act on that. And I honestly feel that we get more of that in this season, but not so far to the point where the character becomes unlikable. Another thing Eric got in this season, I'm jealous because I can't get this yet in this season. Eric gets laid in the season, Donna, their first time, and it's one of the funniest moments because we found out they weren't so good the first time. It's really funny. We also really get to see how Eric is more closer to his mother than Red on this one episode where they go out to the movies together. It's really great for me, as it shows, even though for some of us, when we get to a certain age, we don't want to be seen with our parents, but for me, Eric takes his mother out pretty much almost on a casual date to essentially cheer her up. It's really fun, it's really great, and I felt it was done really well. Now, also this season, we get something really great here. Now, Kelso is kind of the ladies' man of the group, and he is essentially dates Jackie, but he also gets caught up in a sort of scandalous when he is essentially cheating on Jackie whilst dating Laurie. And it essentially leads to a fight with the cat. A fight and a bad breakup. Now, what I love about this is that everyone figures out Kelso is in a relationship with Laurie while still dating Jackie. And Jackie is the last one to find out. Now, this will kind of contrast later, but when they find out, they keep it a secret. They don't tell. And she finds out when she catches them kissing when Kelso wants to break up with Laurie. And it is truly, for me, a really great really, and this is arguably one of the greatest, well, the biggest storyline of this season. There's always a big storyline with each season, and the season ends with, okay, now we gotta understand this. This season ends. We gotta understand Hyde's character, and that is Hyde. He is the rebel, but and when the whole Jackie breakup happens, he slowly helps Jackie more zen tune out. And what happens is that Hyde gets caught with essentially having, well, the most popular 70s drug, weed, pot, and is sent to jail, taking the rap for Jackie. And that's really the big cliffhanger end of this season. Season 3 begins with essentially Hyde getting, released, but also causes a very bad friction with the family, as Red wants to kick Hyde out, but Kitty doesn't, knowing that, look, she's, because this is not it. And, of course, Eric does try to take the rap for Hyde, saying that it was actually his, but this only leaves Red to essentially be strict on everyone. Way too strict. Literally booby-trapping the house. It happens in the first 2 episodes, really. And, of course, Jackie becomes infatuated with Hyde. We also here in the season get to see what we thought was Hyde's real father. Not really true, as we will later find out as we go along. We saw Hyde's mother in the first season, but here we really get to see Hyde's father, Bob, who turns out has been away for so many years, and has been in town for like apparently a few months, and Hyde's pissed. Not only did he leave him, but he never tried to make contact. Now they start to sort of mend bridges. And also this season, I think the relationship between Eric and Hyde kind of go downhill a bit in this season. And that leads to the end. We get some really great episodes, such as when Donna thinks Eric's cheating, although we find out it's not true, and it leads to one of the funniest moments on the show. Kitty is thinking of having another baby. We also get to see, Fez slowly getting more appearances in the or more, with dating other girls outside of the group. We also here get to see, sadly, this will be kind of the last time we see Lisa Robin Kelly as Laurie for a while. She would sadly leave the show, and we also Donna gets a job at a radio station, and here her career path is going well. And like I said, the relationship between Donna and Eric started to almost not deteriorate badly. We get more of them in the story, but it's also really lead to the end, like how there's like moments where you think, oh, this is not going to end well. Also this season, Jackie and Kelso get back together, though it takes a while. She eventually realizes that Hyde is not a match for her and decides not to pursue him. We also get a really great episode where Kitty essentially forces the Formans to go to church, but they don't. And also, Fez eventually does leave his girlfriend when she gets way too crazy. And that, for me, that was always fun. That's the scene where they sneak into Canada. Kelso, Eric, Hyde, Fez, and Leo. It's really fun. And this leads, and eventually we get lead into the last episode. Now, Eric gives Donna, a promise ring. However, Donna is unsure to really commit, and questions the future together. Now, this leads into honestly, a good question between the two. Should they still continue? I'm on Eric's side, as he has a point when he says this. If you can't see a future together in the long run, where does this lead us? And this leads to arguably one of the biggest breakup of the season. I kind of saw this coming, as there was hints of it that they may not last. And it ends with Eric breaking up with Donna, which is rare for me, because from what I've always heard, or what I've always seen, it's always the girl that breaks up with the guy. It's rarely the other way around. Should we get some of that? But I find it to almost to be very come out, definitely for shock value. And I'm on Eric's side of this. Now, they're not married, but this commitment ring just shows how much Eric really cares about Donna. And when it comes to this point, where you feel like this could be, forever after, and I understand Donna's side too, but you see, relationships are about compromise. I'm sure both could somehow compromise. I definitely know Eric can, I definitely know Donna can. The thing is, can both sides do it? If only one side can and the other side can't, then for me the relationship won't work in the long run. And this is how we end the season. And arguably for me, this series, by season 3, still going strong. You see, unlike the previous shows I reviewed, the OC, Arrow, by the time they hit their 3rd season, the energy is slowly gone. I can't say the same for season 3 in my opinion. It's still going strong, and a lot of great character dynamic and craziness happening. Season 4 of the show begins with, first off, it's completely different. The first episode I really like, because I can't explain it, but basically, after the breakup, Eric gets a visit essentially by an angel, and shows him his past, possible future, and present of what it would be like to not date Donna. And I really like how he's jealous of that version's Eric, because, even though his life is pretty much crappy without Donna, he is happy, that he never got to, be with Donna. But then this fun scene when that version of Eric, the one that never had Donna, gets up him when he's mad that he got a chance to be with Donna, even though it ended, and be's envy of him. And I really like that moment. And eventually it leads to the end, and that episode ends with Eric, realizing that Donna is, regardless of how it went, he still loved the memories. And then we begin with the 2 episodes that precede that, with essentially the core group in shambles. Because they don't know who to hang out with, Eric or Donna. It's kind of thrown out there. And basically, I will admit, the season is kind of like that for the rest of the thing, with essentially the 2 slowly rekindling. Also, Donna and to an extension her dad, also trying to struggle to move on when Midge just got up and left. And how those 2 are trying to cope. I really like that. We get a fun musical episode, which I enjoy to the max, more than anything ever that the show did. And also, what I like is we get this also is the complete deterioration of Jackie and Hyde's relationship. And there's what happens is, Kelso cheated on Jackie. Jackie ends up cheating on Kelso, and Kelso's mad for all the right reasons. But then Jackie points out, you did the same thing. And Hyde always brings up, oh, whatever you do, don't go kissing other guys. And also Donna ends up dating one of Kelso's older brothers. And that would drive later into the end, the last few episodes of the plot. Now, I like this one scene when Kelso and Jackie just come at it. Kelso admits, yes, he cheated, but he cheated to let out anger. Jackie's always putting him down, always realizing how dumb he is, and he felt guilty for that. And I like how they both stand their ground, and we come to the conclusion that they're just not a right match. And I agree. They are, for me, a very toxic relationship. Relationships should be compromised, give and take. Not one side should have the dominant control of the relationship. I really like Season 4, but Season 4 also had a lot of things going. It had to do work with the new dynamic. There's a Christmas special, which I really love. And it's really good. This season's really good, but it also feels different. But it's not a bad season either. Honestly, like I said, this show's seasons are constantly getting good, but it had something different. But by the end of this season, when it looks like Eric is about to reconcile with Donna after Donna is heartbroken when Kelso's older brother, Casey, essentially dumps her, you think Eric's going to take her back, but he decides no, he doesn't want to be a rebound, and I give props for that for Eric. And eventually the season ends with Kelso and Donna leaving in a van, like one of those 70's vans driving away, just as when Kelso at the same time stood Jackie up for possible marriage. I absolutely love that. Now comes arguably my favorite season of the show. For me, Season 5 is the best season. There is no denying that. We begin the season off with pretty much in the first few episodes, Eric and Donna get back together, which is good. And this season also continues in the two developing, relationship, getting to the point where Eric proposes to Donna and she accepts. And this causes, and eventually, but they have a sort of secret engagement thing, which eventually kind of results in Eric having a strained relationship with his family when Red finds out, and he tries to do everything in his power to essentially prevent the two from getting married, from actually tying the knot. And I feel that's just really great, drama that they went with. Another thing I really love about this season is we have Hyde and Jackie as a couple. And in all honesty, I find that Hyde and Jackie pairing to be far better than Jackie and Kelso. Because first off, we don't really know how the two actually, really what event led for those two to really have a thing. Jackie and Hyde give a different account, and it's sort of a mystery. But with that in mind, what I really like is that the two have really great chemistry and really work off each other. And I really love that. It's a really great relationship. But then the relationship gets strained when essentially Hyde thinks Jackie cheated with Kelso, and so to get back, he cheats on her. When he finds out it never happened, this is what I like. As soon as he finds out it never happened, what he did, he's straight up honest with her, but she breaks up with him, and he feels bad. Unlike Kelso. However, I would like to point out something here that I found to be somewhat a little bit strange. Basically everyone in the gang except Kelso found out Jackie and Hyde were secretly dating, they didn't tell Kelso, but encouraged the two to come forward to him about it. And I also find it a bit ironic that he found out the same way Jackie found out about him and Laurie when they dated. Eventually this season, and I found that it's just something I just notice. You just notice. Speaking of Laurie, Laurie comes back only in the later few episodes and will be the last time Lisa Robbins would portray the character. And yeah, also Fez is almost on the point of getting deported, which I find to be very interesting. Interesting and surprised that they would even go into the point of Fez actually getting deported. And also Laurie's character changes here. She's still a bit promiscuous, but she's trying to do more good. She's trying to get on better terms with her brother. And in order to make sure Fez stays in the country, she marries him, which leads Red to have a heart attack. With a massive cliffhanger like that, we pick up essentially in the next season with, by this point now, everyone's graduated, and Jackie is trying to get back with Hyde after the events of the previous season. And Donna and Eric still going through with their marriage and their futures in what they want to do. And Eric's all prepared to leave, but he decides to stay when he realizes how, after the heart attack, what his mum's doing to try and keep the family together. He knows deep down he has to stay, even though he feels like he shouldn't, because this is finally his one shot of getting out of here. But he knows he has to stay, and I love him for those reasons. Now, and a really big storyline, two major storylines come in this season. One is Kelso knocking up a girl, resulting in her being pregnant, and him having to essentially come to terms with him being a father. Something I found to be really interesting story and drama, because first off, this is something that that Kelso is really have to be pushed to. Also, Bob essentially ending up, dating, I should say, Jackie's mother, who's back in town. And already that drama and how everyone's reacting to her is all great and fun, and I enjoy that immensely. Another thing, and overall this season is going strong. So like I said, season 5 was my favorite. It's my favorite season. Season 6 is doing alright too, but I feel something's slightly not right here. Something is slightly not right. I've got to be honest, season 6, it's not a bad season. It's not even considered a worse season. But I don't know. There's something about it that's making me tired. Also, by this point in the series, Laurie's character is completely recasted. And, yeah. Jackie and Hyde are essentially getting back together, which they do, to get more fun couple moments. And I also like that this one story that comes out this season, Jackie telling, and would essentially spill over into the next season, with Jackie and Hyde where the relationship they want to go. And I like that as a genuine, honest storytelling that those two characters will be going forward in the series. I really love that. And yeah, I can't really say there's really much going on here. Much going on this season. It's funny as hell, but I also feel like there's not really much in this season. Anyway, we end the season with arguably for me a really, with essentially Eric missing out on the wedding, like standing Donna up. But I will be honest, that does make me slightly begin to dislike Eric a little bit. And his more worse qualities start to come out. And when we come to season 7, a lot of stuff would have changed. In season 7, like I said, a lot of stuff changed. Donna had her hair dyed. to be blonde because the actress in question was doing other projects at the time, and also Kelso, played by Ashton Kutcher, also got his hair chopped. A lot of things changed this season. First off, we get to really meet Hyde's real father, who is African American, and I like how Hyde is interacting with his new family. How he interacts with his father, his now has a sister. I love that. And also, again, the drama between Hyde and Jackie's relationship passes over into the season of where the relationship will go. Kelso is now a cop, which is new. And Kelso and also Fez is getting a lot of girls this season. One thing I liked was, well, at least I found absolutely hilarious and funny, is it was this one girl that was dating Kelso, but dumps him to go for Fez, and preferred Fez over Kelso. I absolutely laughed my head off at that. And also here, this season was different, but in a good way. But I could also see that the season was a drop in quality, but a lot of good things still happened. Leo was brought back, and he's still Leo as ever, and interacted well with the cast. Speaking of that cast, this season, Topher Grace, who played Eric, wanted to pursue a movie career. The same with Kelso. But they both agreed to come back for the final ever episode of the series. And what they did with Eric, they made it that Eric pretty much tried to get a job or try to find a career, and basically he realized that nearly the whole year's gone and he hasn't done anything. And it almost like he's personally putting it off. This eventually ends with him wanting to go to Africa to become a teacher. Now, despite how crazy that sounds, I felt it was personally handled well. And when they realized he was leaving, they decided to bring in a replacement, but not the Randy character. Like I said, Randy only appeared in season 8. But for this, they needed to set up a replacement character. So they brought in the character of Charlie, a very old friend of Eric's. Very old, he is pretty much, for me, he's such a good character because he managed, even though he appears really in the last 2 episodes of this season and sadly the very first episode of the next season. You see, what happened is Charlie is the son of one of Red's old war buddies, and he's similar to Eric due to the fact that he had a similar upbringing. He has like the nerdy and witty elements of Eric, but he doesn't have the laziness, you could say, or the anti-humor. And he is still yet a nerd to swipe his V card, so he shares a lot of similarities with Eric in the earlier seasons. And how he interacts with the remaining cast is all very fun Hyde and Kelso take him under their wing as big brother type figures. Fez would bully him because he is the new guy, and the girls just saw him as the new guy. So already he seems to have had a very good interaction with the cast, and honestly, Eric's send-off I felt was done really well. Also, I just need to point this out. There are the Jackie and Hyde relationship eventually leads to I think 2 breakups. If I recall, 2 breakups in this season. One, they broke up, got back together soon, and then kind of broke up, as Jackie got a chance to have a job in Chicago. And of course, Hyde not ready to commit. But once he realizes his mistake and wants to commit and is willing to propose marriage, he catches Jackie about to do it with Kelso. And that is one hell of a, cliffhanger ending. Like I said, this season, even though it's still funny, I feel the drop in quality. And you could argue this would lead downhill to its final season. Season 8 is just bad. The humor no longer works. It's just bad. First off, with Eric gone, why is there a reason to still stay at the Foreman house? With Eric gone, there's really no reason. You could say, well, yeah, there is because of, well, Hyde still lives there, but it also feels that all the jokes are bland. They also ended Jackie and Hyde's relationship, whereas just when they're about to reconcile, it turns out Hyde drunkenly married a stripper in Las Vegas. And that marriage soon quickly ends, even though when we realize those two are actually kind of a good match, it ends when you find out that the stripper is already married. Again, we got introduced to Randy, but if you're wondering, well, what happened to Charlie? Well, in the very first episode, the character literally got killed off in a dark humor line, which I did not. Which had me going, what the fuck? Already a good character and promising just got killed off. Now, for me, this entire season felt like it was done by a completely different creative team. And to be fair, it was. There was like a big writer strike at the time, and new creators took on the writing duties. For me, it just didn't work. This season is just bad. And it's a clear case of a show when its worst season is sadly the show's last season. And sadly, this show more than proves it. And it's just a nightmare to get through. Like, what also happens this season? Well, Kelso, believe it or not, is not in it for that long. And with Eric and Kelso no longer in the show, you feel their presence heavily. Well, first off, like I said, the two actors went to pursue other projects. Kelso did stay for at least 3 episodes of this season, where he was no longer a cop, and he essentially wanted to move and spend more time with his child and the girl that he accidentally knocked up, which is a good story for him to finally move on with his life. The problem, it felt it was rushed. The Jackie and Hyde relationship thing felt forced. And I honestly felt that the two just didn't have good chemistry. Nothing against Fez, I honestly felt that him and Jackie wasn't a match. Also, this season kind of made Eric even more of a slime ball. Even though he's away, he talks to his mother on the phone on a daily basis, but not much with Donna, eventually leading the two to break up. Donna eventually dated Randy for a bit, but he realized he shared too much in common with Eric, and the two broke up. Randy is the most hated character on the show, to the point where in most promotional materials for the season 8, his character's not there. That just shows you how much he's hated. Overall, this is just a weak season, which leads us into the series final. Now, I like the idea the series final takes place on New Year's Eve just before it's about to become 1980. But with that, some of the jokes are just stale by now. The running gags are no longer funny. And while this is happening, the Foremans plan to move and leave to start a life, to leave Wisconsin, which is a good premise. The idea, but it's supposed to really set up everyone at least knowing where they're going to go, with Fez and Jackie starting, and also again, Kelso comes back, and I will admit, this episode did give me one laugh out of me when Red says, "For the last time, I'll put my foot in your ass," and Hyde says, "And ladies and gentlemen, that is the last foot and ass of the decade. Cheers." I cracked up at that. And then, of course, we end with the final scene with Eric just arriving late and essentially reconciles with Donna. It feels kind of rushed. Really, you should have made that Eric came back maybe in the beginning of this episode. The two slowly reconciling, because it would have made sense if a long-distance relationship, they would have eventually broke up, realizing it would have worked. With him back, the two slowly reconciled and wanted to restart their life together. That would have been great, but it felt rushed. This episode sums up, sadly, the last season, and went out with a bang. It's so bad most people of this show like to even erase what happened in that season 8 never happened, despite the cliff. And I agree, it's not a good ending. And with that said, if I could be honest, if I could rate, now with that said, with season 8, how would I rate this show? Well, I rate it 4 out of 5 stars. So far, for me, the show was good. True, maybe season 7 dropped in quality, but by season 8, it was bad. So that's why it doesn't have 5 stars. It only has 4. And honestly, that's okay. 4 out of 5 ain't bad. But for me, it's if they only brought their A game for season 8, realizing it was its final season, and just wrote the season better, I would probably might give it the 5th star. And there we have it. That's 70's Show, one of the most beloved sitcoms of all time. Famous for its hilarious running gags, great ensemble cast, and an overall hilarious show that has you laughing in and out as the show goes on. And that's all I can say. Join us next time as we review the next TV series review. And for me, perhaps one of the best TV shows of the late 90s and early 2000s, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So stick around for that. And until next time when we tune in on the Steven Hour, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching, and so long for now.